During the post-classical era, pastoralist people left behind a massive, loosely compiled state that completely unified Eurasia. Due to such conquering, the pastoralists changed the culture of the nations they conquered, destroyed long-established empires, and renewed and preserved trade routes. The pastoralists were constantly invading, trading, and moving from place to place, making them the perfect medium for different ideas, technology, and other culture to spread. In addition, they made important changes to the nations they conquered when they ruled. In 1206, Genghis Khan was recognized as the Great Khan, the Mongol leader, and had a stronghold in Central Asia. So, he began to look to expand, and by 1211 he was focused on the conquest of the nation autonomous for centuries, China. By 1215, the Mongols had captured the Jurchen capital, which was converted to the Mongol capital in China, Khanbalik. 5 years later, Mongol rule was consolidated in northern China, and Genghis Khan decided to move on and focus his conquests elsewhere.
By controlling a vast portion of Eurasia and conquering into the Middle Eastern areas, pastoralists linked Europe and Asia, creating safe passage for merchants and travelers. From renewing and restoring old Silk Road trade routes used in long-distance trade to encouraging hospitality to foreigners, the Mongols used China's mass production of luxury goods to their advantage to bring in a flow of income for their expensive military conquests and massive sprawling empire. The Mongols' pastoralist nomadic ways of life allowed them to understand the importance of trade and communication with external cultures. After renewing abandoned trade routes, travelers from far west traveled eastward to Persia, eventually reaching areas linked by roads in Western Asia. In the Far East, Mongols constructed roads to centralize their rule in China, letting merchants use them as well. Unlike in traditional Chinese Confucian culture, where merchants were perceived merely as useless people involved in exchange of goods, merchants were placed higher in social classes by the Mongols, and communications with foreigners were encouraged. People even crossed the Taklamakan Desert along the Silk Roads to encounter the Eastern world. Some Westerners kept document of their travels. Marco Polo, a Venetian merchant, set out on voyage to China and recorded in his book many stories and details of Mongol-era China. Without any of his primary sources, much of what historians know today of late 1200s China would be lost. Despite being a difficult and perilous journey, the adventurer was able to reach China because of the roads maintained by the Mongols. Another to travel from the Western world was Odoric of Pordenone. Both these travels compared the cities that they visited in China to Venice and other cities of the West, but described it as greater in size and wealth. A postal system was also built in order to communicate quickly and efficiently across roads. Yet couriers were not the only to use these lodgings. Merchants and travelers were able to rest and resupply food, horses, and other necessities. These travelers greatly benefited from the frequent roadside stops. Merchant associations called ortog allowed merchant traders to pool their goods and resources into different caravans so that a caravan could get lost. The supplier was not completely devastated. In present-day Russia, the area known as the Golden Horde, Mongol rule unified and advanced civilization north of China. Centered around Sarai, the capital of the Golden Horde, eastern and western trade brought wealth to these lands by newly reconstructed roads. Even at the least safe areas, merchants had little fears of being raided or attacked by bandits, as assured by Francesco Pagolotti. With these roads, the future Russian state was unified, allowing the vast empire to better control their lands. The Mongols kept local administration in effect, using Russian princes to keep the citizens under control. In the eastern part of the known world, the Mongols renewed trade routes to extend an unbroken chain of roads and to sustain contact with foreign cultures. The first time being brought together, Europe and Asia looked forward to an era of competition and rapid regression in the future as communication between the extremes of Eurasia became possible.
Although the pastoralists themselves were nomads, an important role they played was when groups of them converted after conquest and formed a new government. They relatively quickly took over long-established empires and established their own empires. In 1209, Genghis Khan and the Mongols invaded and conquered the Tanguts or Xia in northwestern China. The Mongols and the Tanguts were disputing over tariffs on trade. Mad that the Tanguts had challenged them, the Mongols attacked, and the Mongols quickly took over the Tanguts. Another peoples that were notorious for their ability to destroy empires were the Turks. The Turks were extremely skilled horsemen. The Turk, however, is more experienced than professional farrier and better than trainer at getting what he wants from his pony. When it comes to horses, Turks were a one-man team. They were the herdsmen, the groomers, the trainers, the riders, and the farriers, and the horse dealers. Not only were the Turks good horsemen, they were good with a bow too. The Turk will hit an animal, a bird, a target, crouching animal, a marker post, or a bird of prey stooping in its quarry. Turks could fire an accurate bow off a horse while galloping at high speeds. Empire's armies valued these skills, so they would be drafted as mercenaries who would help them destroy empires. Another territory taken by the Mongols was Iran in Central Asia. The Shah, the monarch of Iran, allowed for the killings of Mongol envoys. Infuriated by this, Genghis led a huge military campaign in Central Asia in 1219. In the invasion, a large but unknown amount of people died. After the fighting had stopped, the Khans had come out victorious. Genghis then left behind troops to keep some territory. During the 13th century, many Turks established small empires in Anatolia. They were all eventually united under a chieftain named Osman Gazi. By 1300, Osman ruled an area of Anatolia stretching from Dorylaeum to the plains of Nicaea, having defeated several organized Byzantine efforts to curb his expansion. The pastoralists were people that lived a rural life. They left behind a legacy of destroying empires and creating new ones.